Picture a queen who ruled half the known world, a woman whose word could raise fleets, decide wars, and silence kings, yet whose own body had begun to turn against her. To the people she was the Virgin Queen, radiant, untouchable, almost divine. But behind her chamber doors she was dying by inches, not from battle, not from plague, but from vanity, fear, and poison of her own making. Foreign ambassadors described the same nightmare. They entered her court, expecting majesty, and were struck by a smell so vile it forced them to steady themselves. Her breath carried the stench of rot. Her teeth were blackened stumps. Her once golden hair hid beneath a crown of wigs crawling with life. This was not rumor. It was the truth beneath England's golden image. Elizabeth Thrumvers had forged an empire of power and art. But her empire over her own flesh was lost. It began with her mouth. Sugar, England's new treasure from the Caribbean, was her private addiction and her silent executioner. Each candied fruit, each sugared almond eaten in triumph etched decay into her gums. Toothbrushes did not yet exist. She wiped her teeth with soot, salt, and honey, believing sweetness would protect her. Instead, it destroyed her enamel and fed infection. By 30, pain shadowed every meal. By 40, her smile was a ruin. Diplomats whispered of a queen who spoke through a mask of perfume and pain. One Spanish envoy wrote, "She is brilliant and majestic, but her mouth is a graveyard." Doctors begged to extract the worst teeth. She refused. When one physician offered to demonstrate by pulling his own first, she agreed. He screamed and collapsed. She smiled and walked away. For Elizabeth, pain was preferable to weakness. A queen could not flinch. So she masked the stench with cloves and rose petals, hid behind silken veils during banquets, and forbade anyone from commenting. To her courtiers, silence was loyalty. To her enemies, it was terror. But the mouth was only the beginning. A deeper horror came from her belief that water itself was death. The Thames was filthy, yes. But Elizabeth's fear grew into obsession. She became convinced that water could seep through her pores and drown her spirit. Her physicians, bound by superstition, encouraged the delusion. "If you bathe," one warned, "your soul may never dry again." So she stopped bathing. Not once a week, not once a month, sometimes not once in a year. Instead, she drenched herself in scent. Wine, vinegar, rosewater, musk. Each morning her attendants dabbed her body with perfumed cloths and layered her in 6 or more gowns. The fragrance mixed with sweat, turning her skin into a slow brewing rot beneath silk and jewels. One maid confessed that her nightgown grew so stiff with oil and perspiration it could stand upright on its own. Still, Elizabeth called herself clean. Clean not by touch, but by illusion. To her, purity meant beauty, and beauty was power. If filth hid beneath powder, then she would wear more powder. Her favorite was Venetian Ceruse, a shining white paste of lead and vinegar. Each layer masked her scars from smallpox, and each layer drove poison deeper into her blood. Soon her cheeks cracked, her skin peeled, and beneath the makeup, ulcers festered. She simply added another coat. Servants whispered that the queen's face was becoming a mask. They were right. By midlife, her expression had frozen, and a single smile could reopen bleeding wounds. Yet the portraits kept lying. Painters were ordered to depict perfection, the ageless virgin queen glowing like a goddess. To show the truth was treason. Her makeup became armor. Every morning the ritual began before dawn. Servants mixed powders, oils, and vinegars until the air turned metallic. The queen sat motionless while her face was rebuilt layer by layer. White lead for the skin, cinnabar and vermilion for the lips, lamp black for the eyes, a drop of belladonna to widen the pupils and make them shimmer. Each ingredient was poison. Each stroke was a wound disguised as beauty. The mask hardened. Cracks opened, oozed, then vanished beneath new paint. Elizabeth endured the pain in silence. "My face is my kingdom," she said once, and she ruled it like a battlefield. The lead sank deeper. Her fingers trembled. Her joints stiffened. She raged at her maids, accused them of betrayal, and refused to sleep for nights. The court called it divine fury. It was lead poisoning. Still she held court, radiant under candlelight, the white glow reflecting from her frozen cheeks. In portraits, she looked eternal. In reality, she was being slowly embalmed while alive. Then came the hair. The same toxins that preserved her face destroyed her scalp. Strands began to fall, first a few, then handfuls. Bald patches appeared. To lose hair was to lose youth, and to lose youth was to lose authority. So she replaced it with artifice. Wigs, hundreds of them, each taller, heavier, and more ornate. Some woven from horsehair, some from the heads of servants, others stolen from the dead. They were stiff with glue made from animal fat and starch, powdered white to match her mask. Water would ruin them, so they were never washed. Within weeks, lice and fleas nested deep in the curls. Servants whispered of worse, white larvae writhing where her scalp met the wig's rim. They powdered lavender to hide the smell. No one dared speak. A French envoy wrote home, "The Queen of England wears a garden on her crown, though I fear it houses more than flowers." The wigs became sacred relics. Each morning the ceremony was exact. 2 maids lifted the chosen piece. A priest blessed it. Guards stood by in silence. Any fallen hair was buried as holy remains. If a wig slipped in public, court halted until it was fixed. Some pieces weighed over 9 kilograms. She wore a steel brace hidden beneath her gown to hold them upright. The metal dug into infected skin until blood stained the collar. Physicians begged her to rest her scalp. She refused. "My head bears England," she answered. To expose it was to expose the realm. The infection spread. Sores opened to the bone. When she collapsed in 1601, they replaced the wig before she woke. Ceremony first, body second. Always. The years narrowed her world to mirrors she no longer faced. Rooms thick with incense, candles burning to mask decay. She banned reflections from her chambers. No one was allowed to see her without paint. Even she no longer wished to. What remained was image, a nation's illusion built atop a body in ruin. The Virgin Queen, immaculate in portraits, but beneath the crown, her skin was splitting, her flesh turning gray, her blood tainted by mercury and lead. And still she ruled. Still she smiled. Still she refused to yield. By the spring of 1603, the mask began to fail. Her hands shook, her eyes yellowed. She no longer ate. Sleep abandoned her. Her attendants begged her to rest, but she whispered, "If I close my eyes, I shall never open them again." She was right. When death finally came, it did not bring peace. It brought exposure. The truth she had buried under powder and silk was about to surface. Within hours, her body began to swell. The skin turned soft, damp, almost translucent. Perfumes were poured over her, balsams rubbed into every fold of flesh, but the smell rose anyway. Sweet, sick, unholy. Dark fluid seeped from her nostrils. Her lips turned black. Her fingers curled into claws. One maid fainted. Another vomited behind the curtain. Still, the chamber doors stayed locked. The queen must remain divine. Physicians blamed the winter air, but they knew the truth. Her body was rotting from years of chemical poison. Mercury, lead, vinegar, mold, sweat. She had been embalming herself alive for decades. Now, in death, the reaction simply finished what it had begun. The coffin was prepared in silence. Gold-threaded velvet, crimson lining, sealed with wax. Yet the odor leaked through the seams. Guards rotated every 10 minutes. None could endure the stench for long. Even outdoors, as the bier moved through London, flies swarmed not around the flowers, but around the queen herself. Her corpse was redressed and repainted again and again. Every effort to preserve the illusion only worsened the decay. The face beneath the lid cracked open, the lips fused together, the skin sloughed from her chin. So they made one final mask, wax, rouge, and lies. The Virgin Queen would look eternal one last time. Citizens wept as the coffin passed. They smelled sanctity. The guards smelled death. But none dared speak. A monarch could rot, yet the myth had to remain immaculate. Weeks later, when doctors examined her remains, they found the truth none dared record. Her liver was black as ash, her bones porous and soft, her lungs filled with sediment from years of inhaling powder. Even her brain had darkened. No royal body had ever decomposed so quickly, nor carried so much poison while alive. Her funeral was a triumph of illusion, paintings of radiance. Perfume over putrefaction. England mourning a goddess while burying a corpse corroded by vanity. In Westminster Abbey, beside her half-sister Mary, Elizabeth was laid to rest, sealed under marble, crowned in legend, and reeking beneath the stone. History remembers her victories. The Armada destroyed, the arts reborn, an empire born from her defiance. But the body beneath the crown tells another story. A queen who conquered nations, yet lost the war against herself. Power could not stop decay. Beauty could not defy death. And the Virgin Queen, so desperate to be untouchable, became a lesson in what happens when illusion outlives the flesh. Even sealed beneath the abbey floor, her legend refused to die. The marble slab bore her title, her triumphs, her divine claim. But those who tended the crypt whispered of something else, a faint, cloying scent that lingered around her tomb. Not rot exactly, not perfume either. Something in between, sweet, heavy, unearthly. Years later, abbey workers called it the Queen's breath. Visitors laid roses and never knew. Children bowed before the effigy, unaware that the woman below had decomposed faster than any monarch before her. Painters still copied the same idealized face. Playwrights still called her Gloriana. The nation still worshipped her myth, carefully forgetting the body that had paid for it. In portraits, she glows, untouched by time. But the glow was lead. The grace was mercury. The purity was fear. Every triumph came at the price of her body, and every inch of her perfection was painted over corruption. Elizabeth ruled an age that prized appearances, empire, ceremony, divinity, all facades built to hide the cracks beneath. She simply carried the logic to its end. She became her own monument, preserved not by faith or medicine, but by denial. And it worked. 4 centuries later, we still see her as eternal. The brilliant queen who defied popes and kings, who spoke to her troops with fire in her voice, who made England believe in destiny. Few recall the smell of her chambers, the sores beneath the corset, the worms beneath the wig. History edits its heroes. Pain becomes pageantry. Decay becomes divine light. Elizabeth understood that better than anyone. She built her power on theater, and even her death was the final act. When the last painter laid down his brush, he left us not a woman, but an icon carved from poison and willpower. A reminder that greatness can coexist with horror, and that the distance between them is only skin deep. If you ever stand in Westminster Abbey and gaze upon her tomb, remember this: you are not looking at marble, but at the final mask of a woman who refused to be seen as mortal. Beneath that stone sleeps the truth. The queen who would rather rot than reveal weakness. A sovereign who turned her flesh into legend. And a body that, even in death, continued to whisper the price of power. Because no matter how much powder you wear, no matter how thick the perfume, the body always keeps the score. The Virgin Queen did not outlive time. She only disguised its touch. And in doing so, she became exactly what she feared most: a ghost of her own perfection.